Go.
A while ago, Dennis brought up a really interesting comment that kind of intrigued me. He said that marriage was created as a women victory. He said that women were able to ascertain in contract form, we call it a marriage, the fact that regardless of how many mistresses a man can have, when he dies, all his property goes to her son. And that's what marriage was all about. In his view, which I admire, women were able to establish marriage is the ownership of the person's last name. Like my last name is Cardoso. If I get married, the contract says this woman's offspring, my son with this woman, is where all my property goes. And in a way, the reason why the idea survived for so long is that the accumulation of wealth was able to happen under these contracts. And whole families were able to be born, villages, empires, kingdoms, or whatever. So he's, from an economic point of view, Dennis says, marriage is nothing more than a contract that makes wealth stay in one place. Because men naturally want to spread their seed and they'll have several mistresses. And all these other kids are called bastards. They're not entitled to what...
They're illegitimate.
They're illegitimate. So, from an economic point of view, marriage is a victory for women in a way that it says the property is mine after you die, the family stays together after you die, all your bastards are out the window. Now, what's your opinion on that?
Hold on. Let me think. I'm forming an answer. Because I have to translate it in my head, I think, in my language.
Well, the problem we have here is that we're taking an emotional concept and making it very economical.
Yeah, man, you're making it a financial point of view, man.
Which, this is how Dennis positioned it, which is that's the challenge. How would you...
When are you saying marriage first started, though? Like what year? Like roughly? Is it like the time of Jesus, or like before or after, or when?
I think it's the moment government started honoring contracts,
so
marriage
roughly
contracts.
how many thousands of years ago, if you will?
But you could argue then, within tribes, it is known tribes, at least in South America, tribes that leadership attracted women. If you were the alpha male, women were gonna come to you. Therefore, what happens to the rest of the guys? Perhaps marriage was created so that the rest of the guys also had access to women to spread their seed.
Which is a form of politics, which allows men to stay together and not necessarily fight the alpha male.
Yeah.
But that's what Natalie was saying. It makes women property. Makes women, we are sharing the women. We're sharing access to women as if it's property.
Yeah, but I mean, it is arguably true. During history has told us, or at least told me, that women were treated as property until not so long ago. Especially in tribal issues. I mean, women were traded for food.
Well, let's ask the women. God. No, seriously. I mean, you told me that it feels like marriage makes women property. Dennis was saying the opposite. Marriage guarantees women rights, last name and property rights that they didn't have without it.
Right.
So it's not actually that oppressive in the end.
I can see his side of it. From the way I understand it, is that marriage was sort of invented when society became patriarchal. When it used to be matriarchal, where the family name and everything was kind of passed down through the woman, and they didn't necessarily know what role the man played in childbirth. Like, women just kind of slept with whoever too. Like, it wasn't like maybe they had one person, or maybe they didn't. Maybe it was just like whoever they felt like sleeping with. And then when they figured out that men, I don't know. I mean, this is like this is a theory that somebody has. When they figured out that a man, he does have a role in the reproduction. Why they had to create marriage was to isolate that woman so that she only had sex with this one man, and so they knew that was their
But why does society need to know that? I mean, why do we need a piece of paper for that?
Because the man wanted to pass down his name and his things and his money, and it wanted, he wanted his money to go to his child, so he had to make sure that the woman, like, was not affiliated with anybody else.
So, in your opinion, is it a moral document or is it an economic document?
It's both. Yeah,
Can it be both?
I think you need to take a step back. I think marriage has meant many things for many people, depending on your socioeconomic status, your culture. At its basic primordial, like, cultures have always had some type of ceremony where a man and a woman, whether you want to call it paper or through some high chief or priestess, that brought these people together, and that for the most part was just based on, like, survival. You needed a woman, or a woman needed a man, however you want to look at it, to have offspring and someone that's going to be with you when you got older and helped out and basically comprised, like, the sort of family unit, whatever that unit was. Moving forward, I think what happened with marriage was, like some people have mentioned here, that it did become, in many ways, a sort of contract. Whether you wanted a social contract, a business contract, but it became contract. Women at some point became property. But it's also important to remember that for other families, marriage...
Sorry, we had that cut off. Okay, go.
No worries. So in many cases, marriage became political. Like, what you did was you had families that maybe had moved up the social ladder, and so you have a daughter and you know a strategic family that you'd like to marry into. That not only helps out your daughter, but your family in general. You move up leverage. Alliances through the European aristocracy, even before that, were very political.
Dynasties.
Yeah, dynasties, just based on, like, marriages between one kingdom, one family, one nation, and another. You bring these alliances together, boom, you form more power, more resources.
But don't you see that as, men naturally want to spread their seeds, they're naturally not going to obey this contract. Why does this contract have to exist? So it's a victory against male...
They don't care about their victory.
Male instinct says we want to spread our seed, we want to have sex with as many women as possible.
They still will.
Yeah, but
let's not...